Hey guys, today I'll be taking a look at Final Cut Pro X and Adobe Warp Stabilizer. Particularly, I want to see how each software package handles stabilization and rolling shutter removal. Now I'll be using a blind test comparison so that you can form your own opinions rather than just listen to mine. So this is the sample footage that we'll be working with today. It was shot handheld on my bicycle as I rode down this bumpy path. Now I used a relatively high shutter speed to try and limit the amount of motion blur found in each frame, and I picked these particular camera settings to limit the amount of rolling shutter that my camera normally produces. So that's some pretty bumpy footage, and without further ado, here's the side-by-side comparison test. So I think you can see that each software package stabilizes the image pretty good, but if you look at the overhead bridge and the buildings in the background, you might begin to see some differences. Now here I've looped certain segments of the video clip that I think will highlight some of the differences between each filter. Once again, by looking at the buildings in the background and the overhead bridge, you might begin to see some of the differences. Alright, so that ends our first comparison. Did one side look better than the other? Well, as it turns out, Adobe Warp Stabilizer was on the left-hand side with Final Cut Pro on the right. Okay, for our next side-by-side comparison test, I've slowed down the video to 50% playback speed. Looking at the video in slow motion, I think the effects become more noticeable. Because I shot this at 60 frames per second and I'm outputting at 30 frames, I'm not actually losing any frames in this demonstration. So did one side look better than the other? Well, this time we had Final Cut Pro running on the left-hand side with Adobe Warp Stabilizer on the right. Now I'm going through the gauntlet one more time, but this time I've tweaked one of the settings. Okay, hopefully you saw some differences between these two videos. It actually wasn't a fair comparison though. In the right-hand side video, I disabled rolling shutter removal to sort of illustrate how when you only stabilize an image, you actually enhance the amount of rolling shutter that's viewable. So for our last comparison, I'm using some full screen samples, and this is of course the raw video. I just want to show you how shaky it actually is. So this is sample A. Compared with sample B. And I'll give you one more look at each sample. So, did you find one sample better than the other? Well, as it turns out, sample A was Adobe Warp Stabilizer and sample B was Final Cut Pro. So hopefully you've enjoyed these comparison tests and are able to form your own conclusion on which software package offers the better stabilization and/or rolling shutter removal. Thanks for watching.